Welcome and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to this special Thursday edition of Action Academy. My name is Randy Lober, Growth Marketing Manager here at Action Benefits, and happy to spread some holiday cheer with you all this morning before we got on to the main event here. Joined today by Chelsea Gomez, our Learning and Development Specialist. Chelsea, say hi to the people before we get started, please.
Hey, everyone. Hey, so glad that you guys took some time out of your day today to learn about what your 2025 probably will look like when it comes to your Medicare business. And yes, Elf is also a great uh, um, Christmas film, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I do think Muppet Christmas Carol is the best one. So we were already listening to, in my opinion, the best Christmas movies soundtrack ever. Randy, back to you.
Thank you for that stunningly executed transition. Uh, so yeah, as Chelsea said, we want to talk to you a little bit about what CMS is proposing for contract year 2027 for the Medicare program. Um, Generally speaking, for those of you unfamiliar, what happens is the November before of the year that CMS makes the rules for. They propose a rule. They say, here's the things we see in the Medicare program. Here are some things we might do to fix it. They put out these proposals, and then they give the public, i.e., you, me, everyone else, some time to comment on it. And then they finalize the rule typically in early spring. We expect the final rule would be out in late March, early April. Sometimes they go into May, but April is a pretty safe bet. So we want to say that up front here, right? That everything we talk about here is a proposal, and we kind of structured the proposals that we'll hear about in a few big chunks. First, we'll talk about some things that CMS is proposing that would directly change the way you do business. There's going to be some other key proposals to change to keep an eye on as they might impact the market as a whole, especially where plans might be offering or where plans might step up benefits or reduce benefits. And there's some other things that are kind of, oh, that's nice. They kind of happen on the periphery. You might not see or feel the direct effects of them, but you should be aware of them. And we should mention also that today's discussion is not exhaustive of everything that's in the rule, but they're the things that are probably most relevant to you and how you do business. There are some things we're not getting here to today because if we tried to, we'd be here for 90 minutes. And gosh, that's just a long time for of the Chelsea and Randy show. We'll also spend some time though, because there's some changes we think you will like. We'll talk about how you can make your voice heard and participate in some of that public comment period and say, yeah, CMS, that is a good idea. Let's get rid of the 48-hour rule. So we'll show you how to do that here as well. As for the sort of format today's conversation will take, we're going to kind of do it in a problem solution format. The problem, though, is not a problem that Chelsea sees. It's not a problem that I see. It's not a problem that Action Benefit sees. It's a problem that CMS sees when they are writing the proposed rule here. So generally, they present a problem and then they present a proposed solution to that problem. Case in point, when that judge struck down portions of the 2025 rule, the one that wanted to rewrite commissions and put a cap on commissions and um, eliminate, overrides and those sorts of things, created a lot of confusion in the market about what could happen next. So they put a severability clause into that proposed rule in 2026 and here in 2027 to kind of say, hey, if part of this rule gets struck down, the rest of it that doesn't depend on that part at least will still be in effect. And so that's the kind of the format we'll talk about. We'll talk through it today. Left side problem that CMS sees, right side their proposed solution. And we'll start first by talking about marketing rules that very directly impact the way you do business and interact with beneficiaries. And if I had to give a sneak peek as to what's coming up next, I think you're going to like it. First thing is they want to address that TPMO disclaimer, that thing you must read in the first minute of every call or in the first minute of every video call that says, we do not represent every plan in your area, so on and so forth. As they've gotten more feedback from the industry, in fact, from people like you, FMOs like us, NABIP, and organizations, they are realizing that requirement is kind of unwieldy. There's no time to say, "Hi, how are you, Bob?" in those calls or really build a rapport. It goes right to compliance right away, at least if you're doing it right. And they recognize that is not maybe the best for generating a relationship with your clients. Also, and this really credit is due to NABIP here in this part here as well in their letter writing and their lobbying campaigns. They recognize the ship clause, right? Please contact your local ship office for other options, for information about all your options, rather. They recognize that that clause really doesn't reflect all of the ways that ships can vary in quality. Michigan's ship is not the same as Ohio's ship because we're better than Ohio's ship, right? Um, or anyone else's ship for that matter. And there's a really uh, wide gap in the quality of advice that those ship counselors might provide. And CMS has recognized that here as well. So what they propose to do is still require you to say the disclaimer, but only before you discuss any benefits. This means you can say, or you would be able to say, "Hi, Bob, how are you? How's your wife? How's the kids? How's everything else?" before you got right into talking about the disclaimer. And they would eliminate the ship clause from that disclaimer as well. Again, keeping the focus on that beneficiary's relationship with you as a trusted advisor, not necessarily forcing you to say, go talk to ship. They might know more than I do. And creating like that weird, awkward pause that carries in the air there. So I think probably on the whole, you'll appreciate that proposed change. The other thing they're taking a hard look at is that call recording retention requirement. Now, if you are using Action Benefits call retention or call recording system, then this is not a worry for you. But if you are for storing those calls on your own, you know that storing that voice and video data is costly because it needs a lot of data. You're storing a lot of data, up to several gigabytes of data, right? Depending on the calls you have here. So they recognize that, and they also recognize that we rarely investigate any complaint that's older than 6 years, and we definitely never investigate any complaint that's older than 10 years, right? Because if it really had a negative impact on the beneficiary, they would have complained much sooner than 10 years later. So what they're planning to do, or what they propose to do, is alter that requirement as well. Their plan is reduce that retention requirement to 6 years, or, and this is a spot where they want your feedback to see what's palatable. They could reduce that requirement to 3 years. They could require you to only retain the transcripts of those calls, right? So the recording, the audio recording wouldn't be necessary, just a text transcription of the call. They could move to a hybrid system where you need to retain the audio of the call for 3 years so they can hear the tone and inflection in the conversation. So it's one thing to say words, another thing to hear words and hear how that call actually went, whether anything high pressure actually happened or anything untoward actually happened, but require you to maintain those for 10 years, the transcripts for 10 years. Or, and here's another spot you might want to weigh in, and we'll show you how. They are open to the idea of eliminating call recording altogether, but they do acknowledge that other oversight of agent and broker behavior would be necessary. But they're not quite sure what else they would do for that oversight in the absence of call recording. And so they are very much seeking input about that as well. And that's a spot where if you particularly are following that call recording requirement, kind of onerous, kind of tough to stick it to, you might have some input there as well.
The
These
theme in
next
general, I
three,
feel like there's been a lot of changes around making sure that we get a lot of like feedback. This is, I know I haven't been doing this for like numerous years, but of all the years I have been doing it, I feel like there's been a lot of them asking for feedback this time around, which I mean, I appreciate. I'm as someone who works in the business. So if you do have any other better ideas as to, oh no, the lights went off. Any other better ideas of how to store that data, let CMS know, or any better way to audit these things, because they're clearly open for a discussion this time around in comparison to the past.
yeah, absolutely. And there's a few other areas where they're looking for your insight here as well. We'll touch on those toward the end of our time here together too. These next three things I think really come together to make Medicare 101s probably one of your most powerful marketing moves in contract year 2027. And so let's talk about some of those things and how they might fit together here. The first thing is they want to look at the current required gap between educational and marketing events at the same venue, right? Right now, CMS requires there to be a 12-hour gap between the end of that educational event and the start of a marketing event at the same venue. So if you wanted to book your local library, you'd have to do your educational event at 6 a.m. and your marketing event at 6 p.m. if you wanted to do it at the same day. And that's not really helpful for anyone. What CMS recognized in the proposal is that 12-hour gap, right, limits the attendance of beneficiaries with transportation issues and especially in rural areas. And if we think about that, all your beneficiaries that you know who maybe rely on a caregiver or a service to get them from place to place, asking them to find a service, to take advantage of that service, that caregiver again, can be a high barrier for some of them to cross. They also think that wait, right, that mandatory period between the marketing and educational events creates, a barrier to timely access to enrollment advice. If the beneficiary is interested in enrolling now, then they should have access to that information now in CMS's eyes. So the first proposed reform here is they want to allow marketing events to directly follow educational events at the same location. So you could now, for example, schedule your educational event at 10 a.m., your marketing event at 11 a.m. But you would have to be clear about when the marketing presentation starts. Say, here's the time where I'm going to talk about specific planned products, and there must be a scheduled break between the educational and marketing events. So there'd be a snack break or a restroom break, so people would have the opportunity to leave if they so choose, but there would no longer be that mandatory 12-hour gap between the two events, which frankly should boost your attendance at those marketing events, right? Because you've already built relationship with folks, hopefully during that Medicare 101. You've got them in the room. Stick around some. I'll tell you more about some of the products we offer or I offer and support. And that in collection with two of the other rules will help to show you why Medicare 101s can be super powerful for you going forward. So they also take a look at a collection of SOAs, scopes of appointment at those educational events. And they say, gosh, that prohibition seems kind of silly, right? Because if the beneficiary wants advice right now, they should be able to set an appointment right now. So again, they see that that requirement that you can't collect SOAs, the educational events, is kind of silly and disruptive to the beneficiary experience. And so they would propose to allow you to collect scopes of appointment at those educational events. But here, ladies and gentlemen, is where it gets even better for you. They would also eliminate the 48-hour rule, meaning their wording exactly is that the 48-hour rule poses a barrier to smooth, informed, and timely decision making by the beneficiary, right? Because right now, when you take that SOA, you have to wait 48 hours before you can actually have the conversation with them about whatever products they might be interested in. CMS is again proposing to eliminate that rule. They'd still require it no matter how the appointment or where the appointment was initiated, but they'd remove that mandatory 48-hour gap between the collection of the SOA and when you can actually talk product with the beneficiary. So I put those three things together. I've got the elimination of that mandatory 12-hour gap. I can now collect SOAs at educational events, and there's no longer a 48-hour rule. That means collectively, I could enroll beneficiaries right after my educational events. So long provided I can get them to come to my educational events in the first place. And Chelsea and I can help you with that. But that's a really fundamental shift in how CMS is approaching the beneficiary experience and a fundamental shift in how your marketing might work for beneficiaries as well.
I was so
So
excited for this. Like,
yeah,
so this is the best change they've made in like years, I think. This is
yeah, it's
so like I know if you've been to any of my webinars, I talk a lot about my parents' experience because both my parents recently turned 65 in the past couple of years. And my dad especially was like, why do we have to wait so long? Like, why do we have to wait? Like, I'm already ready to go. Like, let's go, let's go. I'm like, I get it. Like, I understand. This is not it. My dad was like assuming it was a customer service thing. I'm like, it is not a customer service thing. This is just the rule and the way that you're glad that your agent was doing this at the time because you knew they understood the rules and were following them. And in my opinion, if that you have to explain that to your clients that this is me giving you less good customer service than I want to is me following the rules and the rules are not working, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I think that that is such a good change. Those three together, oh, that's gold. Thank you, CMS. Like it's going to be so much easier for you guys to host those events. They're going to be so much more fruitful for you guys. If you're interested in setting anything up for any of this, let Randy or myself know, or your account manager. We're more than willing to help you take advantage of these changes once they are implemented. They are proposed, but once I'm sure they'll hopefully be implemented.
That is my strong hope as well. We've been talking for a bit though. We'd like to check in with you all. Are there any of these that stick out to you that you're excited about, or anything, or is our excitement overblown? Or as you hear Chelsea and I talk, are you like you guys are full of it? Is anything we're saying to strike a chord with you here? We'd love to know either way. Give us a chance to take a sip of water here, but I'd love to see what you're thinking here as well. Just feel free to put that in the chat for us.
I never understood how it was like it always made more sense to me to collect those scopes of appointments after the educational and after like those events. That always seemed like the most, it just made logical sense to me. I never understood how keeping someone from getting those was giving them a better experience or a better way to sit and think about what they were doing before they did it. No matter how many times it was explained to me, I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. So I'm so glad this is happening.
Well, under previous administrations, right, the idea was that we want to protect beneficiaries from high pressure sales. But I think CMS has also found the high pressure sales that they thought were out there perhaps aren't as common as they might think.
I don't know if they were going on at the educational events. Maybe they're going on
Perhaps.
in another place.
Perhaps. There's a few other key proposals we think you'd want to watch. One of them is directly impacts your beneficiaries. How many of you have had a beneficiary whose doctor moved out of network on January 1st and you're like, gosh, you're in this plan and we can't do anything about it now, right? With the exception of MAOEP in some cases. Currently, CMS only provides SEPs if there's a significant change in provider network. So, if an entire hospital system, for example, decides to drop out of a Medicare Advantage network, CMS has granted on a case-by-case basis SEP, special enrollment periods, to Medicare Advantage enrollees in those cases, right? Where if I'm a Corewell patient and Corewell drops out of XYZ Medicare Advantage plan and I no longer have anywhere to go, CMS has, when the beneficiary is asked, granted SEPs in those cases. CMS is proposing a additional SEP though for your beneficiaries if any provider they see or have seen in the past 3 months drops out of a Medicare Advantage network, that would grant them an SEP. It would require that your beneficiary to call in to 1-800-Medicare to verify eligibility because they would look at the provider directory as up to date as it might be at CMS to verify that your beneficiary's eligibility. But that does create an opportunity for them to move to a plan that their provider would be in network with. The SEP would begin that the month is notified of their eligibility for this SEP and will continue for 2 additional months. And so U of M is another popular example right here that sometimes is in network, sometimes is out of network, depends on everyone's collective mood at the moment, right? So if U of M happens to drop out of network mid-year and your beneficiary sees a cardiologist at U of M, they would then have an SEP, so long as they call 1-800-Medicare, to change Medicare Advantage plans to one that does still take you or accept you as U of M in network, and that's a pretty big deal in terms of continuity of care. There's another big thing. This would be the first year, this being contract year 2026, that carriers would be required to send out a mid-year supplemental benefits notice saying that you had all these benefits embedded in your Medicare Advantage plan, your dental, your vision, your hearing, your silver sneakers, your whatever. Here's what you've used and here's what you haven't. And by June of this year, they're required to send those out to beneficiaries. CMS has looked at that requirement and says that presents a pretty large logistical burden, especially on smaller Medicare Advantage organizations. Think about some of the smaller regional ones that we support and that you support. Um, it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of stuff involved to get that mailing out the door, and it diverts their attention from things that actually make a difference in the beneficiary's health, at least in CMS's words. So they would propose to remove that requirement. Beginning in 2027, beneficiaries would no longer have the ability, or sorry, carriers would no longer have the obligation to send that letter to their your clients. Speaking of continuity of care, a while ago at least, but that's as best a transition as I got at the moment. Um, Michigan is new to the integrated D-SNP market, right? This is in 2026. You'll see the first highly integrated dual eligible plans roll out, which means that the Medicaid, someone's Medicaid, will follow their Medicare enrollments going forward. What happens though, and especially when someone takes advantage of the integrated D-SNP SEP, right? The opportunity to move over to a Medicare plan and have their Medicaid come with them. There's sometimes a limited continuity of care within that shift. And so what CMS is proposing in that case for your folks who are passively enrolled or moved over to another D-SNP because their Medicare or their Medicaid is moving due to auto assignment, those beneficiaries would see a continuity of care provision with their current providers for 120 days, meaning they could keep seeing their current doctors, their current specialists, their current surgeons for 120 days, and there'd be no additional prior authorization for ongoing treatment, even if it was out of network. So if I had D-SNP enrollee, for example, who was being seen for a heart issue. They had a heart procedure planned in February of the next planned year. They would be entitled to that surgery without any additional prior authorization before that 120-day mark. There is some additional change to consider for that integrated SNP plan here as well. So some states like Michigan, for example, we do have a semi-voluntary Medicare managed program, Medicaid managed care program. So only some beneficiary, or rather some Medicaid enrollees here in Michigan can choose to go for fee-for-service Medicaid. They don't have to enroll with a Medicare managed care organization or an MCO. After 2030, those states would be prohibited from enrolling Medicare fee-for-service members in a high D-SNP, and that's like a weird regulatory hurdle that CMS has carved out for themselves. So what they would propose to do in contract year 2027 is remove that rule and allow those who have a fee-for-service Medicaid to enroll in high D-SNPs and coordination only D-SNPs for those members to make that really an apples to apples comparison going forward, make that movement really easy for them between plans. Another thing that's helpful, especially if you work for folks that are coming out of group coverage, is the definition of creditable coverage will be changing. Or if you work in the group market, the definition of creditable coverage will be changing in contract year 2027 as well. And this is due to that Part D redesign that's been ongoing over several years that put in place that $2,000 out-of-pocket maximum, soon to be $2,100 out-of-pocket maximum, and changed a lot of the ways that the drug coverage works on the back end for the beneficiary. What CMS is proposing for 2027 is that group health plans may continue to use a simple determination methodology to see if their coverage is credible and see if they meet that. Or, especially for your larger self-funded plans, they might use actuarial value testing to make sure their plan covers at least 73% of the beneficiary's drug costs. The big change there, though, is that 73%. That's the one that really matters because currently, or rather in contract year 2024, plans only had to cover 60% of someone's drug cost to be creditable. So that swing up to 73% to still have their drug coverage be creditable means that you may see more folks you may see more group health plans not meet that threshold, which means more folks that are enrolled in group coverage may need to access standalone Part D plans to have creditable coverage and avoid LEPs going forward. So still a pretty significant change for those you working in that market.
I'm surprised more group agents aren't concerned about this, to be honest, because I remember what, was it 2 years ago when we first had, or was it 1 year ago with the changes with approving credible drug coverage? Like there was way more concern about this. If you have friends who do group or if you do group, just spread the word, make sure that everyone knows that this might be a thing that your new to Medicare clients might need to know.
Yeah, and for a lot of our agents who work in that small group market, you might not have a lot of choice, right? And whether the coverage is creditable. There's no prescription carve-outs in Blue small group market, at least. So you're kind of stuck with whatever coverage Blue just wants to give you, or whatever you want to buy at that point. But do keep an eye on their credible coverage determinations. We'll let you know if, as long as you're in a co-broker arrangement, we'll let you know what Blue says about those going forward. So you have the opportunity to notify your groups, and they can notify their beneficiaries in turn about what they might need to do. But keep in mind that you may be writing more standalone Part D plans for your group enrollees in the future. This one is really interesting to me. That's on your screen here. And what CMS is taking a look at is account-based plans, things like health reimbursement arrangements, flexible savings account or flexible spending accounts, and health savings accounts don't actually drug coverage on their own. Instead, they're financial arrangements that allow the group to fund other coverage, like the group health plan or an ICRA that allows for the funding of individual coverage. And so CMS, and really making that distinction between the financial tool and the actual benefit, says if you're using this financial tool, if you're using some of these account-based plans, you don't actually have to notify people whether they have creditable coverage or not, because it's not actually the financial arrangement that's offering the drug benefit in this case. And this, I think, is important for everyone to understand because especially if you work in the group market, that means folks may not be notified if they don't have credible coverage, meaning they're going to have to do some paperwork and some legwork to figure out whether they'd be subject to a Part D LEP. And for those of you in the individual market, you got to get a little more familiar with the group drug plans offered around you, so you know whether or not someone coming to you that's aging off of their group plan, or turning 65 at least, will have credible drug coverage going forward. So that in that way, that can make things a bit harder for beneficiaries if they're not even aware and not even required to be made aware whether or not they have creditable coverage going forward. CMS is also proposing some changes to the star rating system. That 1 to 5 system, that's a measure of quality of both the plan, the care they provide, and customer service as well. And really, the exact word CMS used here is having too many measures in the star rating system kind of promotes teaching to the test, right? It kind of promotes plans only paying attention to these things that we lay out that we happen to think are important, but not really taking a look at the holistic effects of their program and whether or not they're actually improving health outcomes. So what they propose to do is remove 12 measurements from the Part C and D ratings and add one new screening measure. And the 12 measurements they intend to or would like to remove from the star ratings are all ratings that plans do pretty well on anyway. Generally speaking, most plans meet somewhere between the 87 to 95th 87 to 95% of plans meet these thresholds or receive the highest rating from CMS. So really CMS takes a look at the list here you see on the screen, making a ton of decisions about appeals, reviewing appeals decisions, care management, our foreign language interpreters available at call centers, so on and so forth. And they're saying if everyone's doing a good job of these already, these are perhaps causing an artificial inflation of the star ratings, causing a bit and causing a little bit more bonus payments to be paid out to those carriers on one hand, but also they're not really providing us any meaningful data about those carriers because these carriers are doing these things anyway, right? It doesn't give us any room for any kind of corrective action that would actually improve beneficiary outcomes. So you see here the list on the screen of things they're proposing to remove. There's also one thing they propose to include. They see that depression exacerbates other conditions, it can make other things worse. And about 9% of those folks who are 60 or better or at least Americans at least, are diagnosed with depression. So they are advocating to add a depression screening plus follow-up care metric into the star ratings. So they want to make sure PCPs are screening for depression. And if this screening dictates some sort of follow-up care, whether that's a call or a referral or something else, that happens within the next 30 days after the screening to really impact the star ratings. CMS did take a look at how those proposed changes could impact star ratings on the whole. Generally, they saw these figures here. 62% of plans would see no change in their star ratings going forward. 13% of plans would see an increase by half a star. 25% of plans would lose half a star. And one contract out of all the contracts throughout the United States would decrease by one full star. But these things matter, right? Because if you're over that 3.5 star threshold, so 4 stars or better, your plan qualifies for more revenue, more a performance bonus from CMS essentially, and plans kind of haggle over these stars or on over these ratings. So by giving plans sort of less things to haggle about here as well, CMS is hoping to sort of smooth the litigation that they often come under. You know, Humana lost a half-star rating on some of their contracts because a um, interpreter wasn't available fast enough on some of those calls. Ended up costing him $80 billion in revenue for that one phone call that CMS happened to audit, and that didn't feel like a really fair, uh, implementation of the rules. So that's where some of these changes come from here as well. Chelsea, I saw light bulbs go off for you.
I thought too about the SEP you get from a 5 star plan, how some plans would not, depending on whether or not you're increasing or decreasing, that would affect that SEP. I know we haven't had one in Michigan in a minute, but um, that could happen based on the changes of these stars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A chance for, again, additional flexibility for your beneficiaries. But again, looking at the numbers here, CMS says roughly this landscape of the market wouldn't see much change based on those recalculations. Love to hear what's on your mind after these, though. Is there anything that sticks out as relevant for your personal book of business? Or Chelsea, anything else you saw out of that last kind of cluster we talked about that could impact the market here?
I'm glad to see that there's going to be more options for those, especially in like the rural areas, or maybe up in the northern areas, for if their provider decides to leave, that they have more options to change if that's what was their big deciding factor. Because I can't see that being I can't see that being a huge one down here in Southfield or in the more urban areas, but I could definitely see that in the areas that we're serving more in the northern counties, where there's okay, we have one, endocrinologist in our town, and oh, they decided to leave the network. When I got to go one town over to see my endocrinologist, and a new endocrinologist, I guess I should say, and oh, they're not in my network. Oh, gee, like, so I could definitely understand where this could snowball into a bigger problem for a beneficiary that could be solved so much more easily if we could just, well, let's just throw you in a new plan where you are covered because you got to go see that doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big deal. Does it put some more work on some of us off season? Sure, but it also allows us to take better care of those beneficiaries who happen to fall in those cases because doctors can drop out of network at any time, right? There's no contract length that they must adhere to. There's also a few things that fall into this, oh, that's nice category, things that you might want to be aware of, but again, might not directly impact the way you see, feel, experience the Medicare program. First thing is that current rules do not permit hemp and hemp-derived products to be covered as SSBCI. So I can't use my OTC card to go purchase hemp-derived products, right? But CMS does recognize in some of the language here that hemp-derived products um, like whole hemp seed, hemp protein powder, and hemp seed oil All may have a medicinal benefit, or all may have a pain management benefit for some beneficiaries as well. And so they would allow beneficiaries to use their OTC cards, or their, as long as it's part of the SSBCI benefit, to purchase those products, so long as the carrier has met the reasonable expectation standard for adding their product to their plan. So if that product does pass the smell test, right, it has a reasonable expectation of improving or maintaining the overall health and function for this disease, for this problem the beneficiary may face, that those hemp-derived products would be covered. CMS was very careful to point out, though, that cannabis products not okay in this case. Anything containing over 0.3% of THC would not be covered or not be permissible under this plan, but anything below that threshold would be allowed for beneficiaries to access with their SSBCI benefits. So that is a change for some folks as they are, looking to uh, use those OTC benefits. CMS also realized they made a bit of an oopsie in a lot of their regulations, a lot of their rules, and in fact, the standardized summary of benefits that they have required carriers to use. And remember, we talked about that Part D redesign, gets rid of the donut hole, puts in place that $2,000 cap, so on and so forth. Turns out all the documentation and regulations just haven't kept up with the actual law. CMS acknowledged that. So they're modifying language in a bunch of places to reflect the new design of the Part D benefit, that you go from deductible phase to initial coverage to the catastrophic phase. There's no more donut hole, and it's correcting summaries of benefits to help make that clear throughout the Part D ecosystem. So there will be hopefully less confusion for beneficiaries there as well. Good kind of quality of life issue to be aware of. CMS is also looking for some information from the broader market around some things that are happening in the market that it doesn't quite understand. And there are a lot of things that CMS doesn't understand, frankly, about the market it's attempting to regulate. First thing is CMS is noticing that a lot of dual eligibles, those who are eligible for both Medicare and Medicaid, are enrolling in C-SNPs and I-SNPs at what they see as an alarming rate. So they're enrolling in chronic condition plans and institutional plans in an alarming rate, and they really don't know why. It runs counter to their goal of having beneficiaries have their Medicare and Medicaid aligned and provided by the same organization. CMS really wants folks to have their care provided by the same organization because they think there's cost savings, there's an ease to that of accessing care in those cases. So they're trying to understand why it's happening, but they're also want to propose some solutions to that as well. So they're wondering whether they should adopt similar look-like rules as there are for MAPDs. So if there is a C-SNP out there that has 60% more of their enrollees are dual eligible, they'd eliminate those plans from the market, right? They don't want the lookalikes out there because they want folks in those integrated plans. They could go the other way with the regulation. Rather than eliminating plans, they could increase the care coordination for C-SNP and I-SNP enrollees. So they may require C-SNPs to coordinate more with Medicaid, or I-SNPs to coordinate more with Medicaid if the person is on Medicaid there as well. And they are really curious about why there are why there are so few chronic mental health C-SNPs available in the market as well. So we talked just a few slides ago, right, about how 9–10% of seniors do have at least depression, and there's more that have other chronic mental health conditions as well. C-SNP, that is a qualifying C-SNP category. CMS isn't quite sure why those plans aren't out there, so they do want to try and incentivize creation of those through some means as well.
We don't have any in Michigan at all. I believe they're
We
only in
don't.
California, and I forget the other state. There's two states that
Yeah.
they're in. But I remember being so surprised when I found out that these exist, that like there was no coordination of care for C-SNPs and I-SNPs. I think that's probably a really good move for CMS to put those things, those coordination of care benefits in C-SNPs and I-SNPs.
Yeah. Absolutely, right? Provides a better beneficiary experience when I have a one-stop shop for my care.
Right. Why
CMS
would that not have been a thing
also
in the first
notes,
place?
Yeah. CMS also knows, or finally for the first time acknowledges, that uh, carriers and providers are upcoding, right, to get more risk adjustment payments out of Medicare, out of CMS. And they finally put this in black and white. It says, yes, we know this is happening. We don't know what to do about it, in not as many words. So they're seeking ideas for how to change the risk adjustment methodology so that doesn't rely on UHC's nurses going door to door and saying, hey, are you sick? Hey, are you sick? Hey, are you sick? And instead incorporating other factors to infer the relative risk that a beneficiary might pose to the program. What that should have the net effect of doing, should it, the CMS agree on a measure and flesh out a measure between now and April, is that should actually put some downward pressure on Medicare spending. And if there's downward pressure on Medicare spending, that is really makes things more affordable for everyone, right? If there's more regulation there. So they realize that there is potential for some wasteful spending out there. They're trying to rein it in rather, and they want some feedback on how to do it. We also talked a bit about star ratings a little earlier. CMS is also aware that carriers are gaming both their risk and quality scores here as well. So right now, there is any change to star ratings have to go through this big long rulemaking cycle that we're talking about. Propose a rule in November, approve it in August, doesn't go effect until the October after that. So there's a whole gap of a year where CMS can really do anything, but when they notice there's gaming of the system happening, right, or any unintended consequences happening, what they want to do is shorten that timeline for them to legally make changes to the star rating system so they can limit those opportunities for abuse of the system and really zero in on what those quality bonus payments are, and shrink some of that possibility as well. Before we tell you how to make your voice heard on some of these changes here, we will get to one more thing that didn't make it into the deck, but is still newsworthy, and we'll show you some things here. Chelsea, anything else to add, or anything that from our audience that you want us to address that we didn't hear today?
Not particularly, other than just this, as someone who went through and read all of it, like it does sound in general, in comparison to other years, that CMS is looking for comments even more so than any other. I don't think they'll get more comments because there was a particular year when a lot of comments were being commented. Um, but this is not that year. But they are looking for comments. They many times it was repeated within that document. They were looking for agents to make their voices heard, the public make their voices heard. If you have anything that you want to tell them, let them know. And they can probably put that in effectively, hopefully.
The other thing, yeah, and this is kind of where we're going with what's on your screen here, is an article we just put out. Last Friday on the 4th, CMS also wrote a letter to states realizing that, there's a lot of volatility with, is the polite way to put it, with commissions here at the moment, with carriers dropping plans off of enrollment platforms, with them choosing to go to non-commissionable in the middle of AEP, so on and so forth. And some states, a list of 6 of them, in fact, Delaware, Idaho, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Oklahoma, I essentially said, wait a minute, that's an unfair practice. That's not okay. You can't do that to agents in the middle of AEP. And CMS essentially on Friday said, states, butt out of this. This is our sandbox. We're the sole regulators here. But what they did do is they did ask for some additional feedback on the Medicare program. They're curious. They seem to be broadly unaware, or at least tone deaf, about the impacts that some of us are facing here because of those changes to commissions, changes to enrollments broadly. So they invite additional comment in the end of that memo here. And one of the requests for information they make is about general improvements to the Medicare program. So this is an excellent time, we think, to remind you how to make your voice heard with CMS on these rules. I'll come back over to this screen here for just a moment. Public comment for this rule does close on January 26th at 11:59. Chelsea's put this link here in the chat. It's as simple as clicking on this link and clicking on the blue comment button, and it'll open up a little window for you to write to CMS exactly what you think about any of or all of these regulations. You also have the entire rule put that down there for you so you can get the read what's actually there in black and white. If you don't take our word for it, or if you want to dig in more to something that we talked about here today, CMS is legally required to read and respond to all of your comments. Doesn't mean that your comment will go into effect, right? But they are required to read and respond to your comments. So this is as good of a chance as any as you have to talk to Uncle Sam, make your voice heard about these. Say, yes, please eliminate the 40-hour rule. Yes, thank you for the termination of provider SEP or anything else you want to say. Can't stress enough the importance of your voices here in saying so. Thank you for spending the time here with us. Chelsea, before we say goodbye for the day, any good final thoughts from you?
Nope, thanks for spending some time with us. Stay tuned for the payer notice for the marketplace if you are a marketplace agent. Normally we have we have that by now, but I'm assuming the shutdown has something to do with that. But we, as of this morning, have not heard anything about the similar payer notice for the marketplace. So stay tuned for that. And happy OEP if you celebrate. You got a little time there. And contact your account manager us if you need anything. We're here.